Where's Angie at? That's the one I always look to. If
Oh,
Angie's ready, we're ready.
we're ready.
If she's not, we're not.
We're live.
All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today, our budget work session, general work session, a little bit mixture of a couple of work sessions today. And I'll recognize our county manager who usually leads us through these work session agendas.
Yes, sir. So as far as the budget work session today, the primary purpose is to, first of all, talk about our overall revenues. I've asked Ms. Ash to come and just update the board as far as the revaluation. And then I've also asked the finance officer, Ms. Fox, to just pull together some potential tax rates that we'd be discussing in the future. So for example, the revenue neutral rate and things of that nature. Also, since we're talking about taxation, I've invited the Casher Twinville Volunteer Fire Department, Chief Dillard, and then also Tim here from the Colway Volunteer Fire Department to talk about fire taxes. And so as you can see, the whole theme is really about taxation and revenues as far as the budget session goes. And then, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, we went ahead and just advertised this as a general work session. So if you see at the bottom of the agenda, there's just other business, and that's intended to be, or really anything that the Board of Commissioners wants to bring up that you would normally do at any general work session. So if it pleases the board, we'll go ahead and just get started and just recognize Ms. Ash to talk about her information.
All right, good afternoon. Nothing has changed in this chart. This was the same chart that we presented at the reappraisal update before notices were mailed. We have went through the entire informal appeal process, and just for reference, we got roughly 1,500 appeals, which is less than 4%. I expected 3,700, but we're processing those right now to see what kind of value changes will arise from those. You want me to mention that?
Is the appeal date passed? So this is all, okay,
Yeah,
good.
we sent notices February 1st.
Yes, I remember.
The deadline was March 2nd.
Okay,
We still had some trickling in, and we've had some people say they had issues with the mail. And if they're late, we're still accepting them.
okay,
And we'll keep reviewing them until these notices go out, and then we'll have to tell them, I'm sorry, you're late, you'll have
Yeah.
to start the next step. So.
Sure.
All right. We'll get into the fire districts. So this is a visual representation of the county and our 8 different fire districts. Highlands is that little purple one down there in the corner. It's kind of hidden sometimes compared to the rest of them. And then we also have the Casher one right above that, and the Coley in blue, the ones we're talking about today. I know we have the rest of them. And I wanted to show you that map and then compare it to our next map, which is our township map. We have 17 townships, so you can see those 5 districts cover multiple different townships. So it's not that they all are across the board in one particular fire tax for one particular township. They do carry over. And then on our next one is just breaks down what townships are covered by each fire district. So Cashers is a portion of Cashers Township, all of Hamburg, and also a portion of Mountain Township. And it's roughly 1,400 or 14,510 parcels. And then Highlands is the other portion of that Cashers Township with just 305 parcels. Most of those are in the Macon County side. Coley, though, however, is a portion of Canada, all of Candyport, all of Coley, the other portion of Mountain, River, a portion of Scotts Creek, a portion of Silver Roll, and a portion of Webster. So it covers 6,139 taxable parcels. So it does cover a wide area of different townships, or portions of different townships.
and WCU is not a taxable parcel.
It would not be counted as a tax.
So that's a big portion of this, but not taxable.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify, thank you.
Yeah, it would be quite a bit more parcels if I was to look at the parcel count.
Sure.
But yeah, we're just talking about the taxable ones, the ones we actually
Right.
have value for.
And so the values that we'll be talking about when we're talking about potential tax rates
Yes,
will not have the value for
right,
WCU.
okay.
So, and then on the last one here just shows the values compared to 2020 to 21 from the reappraisal. for each of those 5 districts. Will show representation. Of course, Coley, again, same thing I mentioned before, a lot of that was the addition of several new apartment complexes. It's my understanding we're getting ready to have some more apartments right down the road over here. And that just shows the breakdown of how much value will be, was changed. This is all subject to, appeals as well. That's really where that 20% of Coley more came from, was those apartments. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
On those 1,400 folks who are repealing talking about repealing, how many are from the Southern District?
I think there was,
Ballpark is,
I just looked before I left. I think it was 300 in Casters and 350 in Hamburg. And then another 100 something in Mountain, so the majority of them.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no questions for Ms. Ash. I went ahead and asked Ms. Fox to go ahead and pull together, and this is the first estimate of what a revenue neutral tax rate would be based upon the values that we just saw. So I'll go ahead and just pull this up and have Ms. Fox explain. There is a methodology that's required by state law in order to calculate the revenue neutral rate.
At the bottom of the yellow, you can see what the revaluation was for January 1st, 2016. That was the value at that time. And after that, for the next 4 years, you factor in the growth for the fiscal year. And you can see the first year was 1.29% and 1.63, 2.06, and 1.81. So, and then the revaluation effective January 1st of 2021 took the value that Tabitha presented of the $10,657,000,000 and added motor vehicles, which is $415,301,000. And then we're holding in reserve for appeals $100 million. So that would bring the total to $10,973,084,918. So the estimated tax rate, the current rate's 38 cents. And the equivalent levy would be 33.9 cents. Then you factor in the growth of the 5 years, the 1.7%. If the revenue neutral rate would be 34.47 cents. That would give you the same levy plus the growth for that 5 years. Of course, these numbers are subject to change because as soon as we get the appeals, we'll have to update.
And this will be the first release of this number. So there will be, we talked before about value has nothing to do with the actual tax bill itself.
Right.
Or it has something to do with it, but it doesn't allow you to calculate your actual tax bill until you start looking at a rate. And so this is the first rate number that'll be presented right now publicly. So some people may start taking their new value and seeing what this rate would do. So you may get phone calls or feedback from the public in regards to that.
I think currently we're like 4th or 5th lowest tax rate in the state.
Yeah, we're at least in the bottom 5. Yeah, we're right there. I don't have that. I have that little association book right on my desk.
I know, and I meant to bring
Yeah.
mine too. And all that. Yeah, sorry.
All right, so any other? So if not, if there are other questions on that, then we do have Chief Dillard from Castro-Glenville Volunteer Fire Department, and ultimately just ask him to come and present. I know, Chief, you have several new components to your budget. Also, our contract is ending this year, so I believe the conversation with the board is to introduce this their upcoming budget, and then also discuss with us eventually updating a 4-year contract, I believe is what we've discussed. So Chief, I recognize you.
Thank you for having us today. Don't mind if I pull it down.
So please do.
Yeah, you're fine. It's hard to talk.
I'll wear it when I have to.
Yeah.
It's hard to speak with it. Do appreciate the opportunity to come talk. We, of course, we got the fire tax, be 6 years ago this July. Our plan that we made everyone aware of was to hire 6 more people within 5 years and man another station. And 5 years came and went so fast, we still don't realize it's gone pretty much. But our plan was to go to Sapphire and put people. And in reality, we got to look at the numbers. We're running about 160 calls out of the Sapphire station and about 160 or 70 out of Glenville. But then we run 95 calls off of the Yellow Mountain station, mostly because of treating. They have those new Club Lodges Drive, and they burn more breakfast over there than you've ever seen in your life. And they're all legitimate calls. I mean, it's always something burnt.
Oh, my
But we run
goodness.
95 calls out of the Yellow Mountain station and 50 off Blue Ridge School, so at the rescue squad building. So if you figure all that in, Glenville would be an overwhelming deal. But it's kind of come to reality that we're better off just to have them all in cashers. And so we came 2 years ago when we were to review. We had a 5-year plan and a 4-year contract. So 2 years ago, we asked you for a 1-year extension, and we held our budget. Well, last year, I worked really hard with the board of directors, and we came up with a great budget. We felt like to add 3 more people and have 3 per shift and 2 of the day. Our records last year showed the busiest time of day was 10 a.m. and the second busiest was 4 p.m. And everyone knows that if you know anything about cashers, you know that every volunteer up there is working a good job at those times of day. So it's the ones that start the building running the calls, and us and the rescue squad. So our proposal is to add 3 more people, and that would give us 3 per shift and then 2 of a day. And as you all know, we did buy the property from Mr. Bars for $850,000. There is a payment in here for that, and Mr. Neely did give us a $200,000 lot at Wade Hampton to build station number 7. And we would love to get started on that. It is exactly 5 miles from the station site to the South Carolina line. So could not be better to cover all of our district. And that's going to, with 7 stations, that'll tie us in a whole lot better where we need to be. We also bought a new service truck, and we added that payment. And so we held our budget this year. We did not have the heart to ask for any increase at all during COVID. That would have just been a slap in the face to everyone involved. So we did not do that. So we started making the payment on it, even though it's not in our budget, and the land payment, same deal. And we did get an increase through growth, of course. So that's helped a lot. But, you know, we feel like in 5 years, we've done a great job. Last year, we responded to 712 fire calls. We do not do medical. That was all fire calls and 42 structure fires. And we kept our fire loss at $1.5 million. And a lot of that was content, because we did not lose hardly anything. That we had guys just get there so fast. It just makes such a big difference, you know. And I'm not young anymore. I'm 60, but several of the calls, they were on the scene before I got out of my house. It's just embarrassing. And I'm usually the first one to get to the building, grab another truck. So, you know, the paid guys are getting there in 2 and 3 minutes, and I'm 9 or 10 or 12. So there is a big difference. And it is paying off so well to have it. And we have the fire academy at Blue Ridge right now, and those little guys are coming and doing a great job and helping us. We've taken several as junior firemen. But, you know, everything has went well. There is no way in the world we could have made it without what y'all did. So anyone that was here at that time and helped us, I still want to say thank you very much. Obviously, with our future, we want to build, the next thing we want to do is go to Wade Hampton and build a station. We have trucks, we have the people on the roster, and all we need is building back them in. I have a building payment included in this new budget to do that. And the Boys and Girls Club have broken ground on their new building, and they're going to go ahead and put the road in. We're going to have to help them with that a little bit, and the well. And our plan is to, when we come back in 4 years, to be ready to propose a payment for a new station next time. And we'll see. Of course, like I say, time flies pretty fast.
Yeah.
we feel like we've held our budget for 6 years, and we've done a great job with it. We've run a lot of calls, we've helped a lot of people. And of course, we're there for a lot of other things to help people with it, because the guys being there, people know they go to the firehouse, and somebody's there 24 hours a day. And we feel like we've done everything in our power. We've kept some new guys. Actually, Jackie Medford's last shift is today. He's retiring. He was one of our first guys, and he turned 65 and he's retiring. So we've been taking applications to replace him. So we'll do that probably Monday. But, we've made it great. We've had a good number of people there. But what's happening is all of our volunteers have great jobs, and they just cannot come out. We're getting a lot of help on structure fires when we need them, but, there's just so many other calls. Hey, guys are getting out in the middle of the night by themselves, and, 2 people out is still a blessing compared to a lot of people. But, we just need an extra person on there to help on the 24-hour deal. And we feel like, we've been building up and we've got the community support, and we just feel like it's time. Everything in our budget is, other than fuel, I'm pretty satisfied with. There's no way to know what that's going to do. There's no way to know how many calls we're going to run this year and what fuel prices will be. So it can vary pretty much. But, we're prepared to absorb whatever. And we've been able to hold a good budget through COVID. We've kept the door shut and sat in there and looked out the windows and run calls when we had to. And I'd be lying if I didn't say sometimes it was almost nice when the pager went off and you get out of the building. But, Casters is out of control. Best words I can tell you. And we're just going to have to do the best we can to keep up. Mr. Jones can tell you all about it up there. I mean, we're seeing traffic right now that was 5 years ago, July 4th. And it's just crazy. Your guys got stuck yesterday, 6.5 hours on tractor and trailer wreck at the Transylvania County line. I mean, what volunteer can go down there and stay 6.5 hours, in the middle of the day? And there's nobody else to go. And we were doing a controlled burn at the fire academy, so we were able to do all that and still run a couple of other calls. So I'm sure it's going to be the busiest year ever. And we appreciate all the support we've had from y'all in the past. But we're asking you, and according to the numbers here with the growth and everything going on, I mean, to get what would take care of us is not that big of an increase. I understand any tax increase is a tax increase, but it's, the numbers are in our favor. The growth is in our favor. It's not letting up at all. We didn't have High Hampton open last year, and Marywood was not there, and the weddings were not there, and it was still a busy year for us. And all those starting back up this year, it's going to be quite a year. We just want to continue growing our fire department. I've always been proud of the fact, I've been there 42 years and 35 is cheap. And I've always been proud of the fact that we've always tried to grow and be progressive. And if y'all will help us continue that, we would certainly appreciate it. I'm sure the citizens of town will also.
I can give a little testimonial. I've said this to a couple of people, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
My fire tax for my residents is $78 a year. Before, and I can go back 10, 20 years easily on the annual donation. I might sound like a cheap fella, but I'd give $100 a year in December to Cashers Volunteer Fire Department, Glenville Cashers. And on there, I always go to their breakfast. I'd write a $50 check for their breakfast. I don't think I ever gave you a dime in the boot drive because I worked on weekends. And y'all did that on Saturday at 107. So I gave $150 to Glenville Cashers for years. That was just, so I cut my payment in half down to 78, because everybody's paying their fair share. It's just, and you have wonderful donations like the property and the McNeely's, and people do that all the time in the southern area, all over the county. But that's just one example of how the fire tax is a truly affordable way for citizens to contribute to the safety of their community. And then the other thing, we're talking about growth. I was talking to I work at the restaurant there at Micah's. Randy came by and got some food for the firemen yesterday, but the fellow who works with the ski slope came over and he got some lunch yesterday too, and said they had their biggest year ever. I said, well, how big? He goes, Our best year ever on that ski slope was $503,000. They've already broke $1 million. And they closed this weekend. They got this last
Oh,
weekend to
my
go.
goodness.
They have done, it's unprecedented. We had our busiest January in record at the restaurant I work at. And this is January, this is, so that it's coming. I think we saw 1,005 homes that were sold in the Hamburg Cashers District in one of our meetings a few weeks back. 1,005 homes in just alone. Now, were those homes occupied last year? I can't say they were. My guests would tell me most of them weren't, because they're available to be shown to be sold. And I think we all know there was Cashers Highlands Board of Realtors had 2,800 homes in inventory 18 months ago. I'm going on memory here, and there's just a little over a couple hundred left. So, and 1,005 of those was in Cleveland Cashers, much less the High Hampton, the Cheeky Pen, Lonesome Valley, everybody is, there's more out of town electricians and plumbers than there are in-town trucks when you look around town. That tells you something. No.
And also, we did lower our rating. We got a class 5 like everyone else, and I heard some great news in there a minute ago too. Two people were saying they actually got a check back from a class 6 to a 5 in Colby's district. And we were always told before that they residential would not fall below a 5, below a 6. So imagine what's going to go on in our community dropping.
Yeah.
That'd be,
The class 5
oh,
will
yes.
save them. Besides the
That's
businesses, will
huge.
definitely save. So,
Yeah.
That's another good selling point for us is we're still selling. We're still, the greedy person in me wanted a 4, and probably we're just lucky to get a 5 because, it's just. I was telling the guy that came, I thanked him for being so kind, and I said, why do we not get more credit for manpower? He said, well, all those fire stations. I said, well, you told us we had to have them. He said, well, you do. He said, Randy, if anyone knew how big your district is, they would know how good a class 5 is. Because when they walked in their fire district to rate us, they said we had the biggest district in the state of North Carolina protected by combination fire departments. And just to add a little bit of stress to me, we actually wrecked the truck the day before they got there. Just throw that in there. But we got through it and we got the class 5, which I'm very proud of. And hopefully next time we'll drop again. We're not going to let up. It's just, things are different up there now. Now this summer's going to be a nightmare to say the least, I believe.
Well, I think you're right. It's a changing time in Jackson County as far as the influx of people and population and homes. And it's probably going to continue. So you're being proactive, and that's good.
Very good. Don't have anything to say.
I do have one question. Chief Dillard, you said that Wade Hampton gave you 2 acres?
Mr. Neely did. It was on Hampton property. It was
Okay.
$200,000.
So they donated that to y'all. That's
He's the
wonderful.
one that sold Silver Run, all the Silver Run properties.
Oh, sure.
And
Okay.
thank goodness, fire department's my favorite charity, and we were
Yeah.
his.
Good. Well, that's a huge step toward getting that.
The
station.
general manager of Wade Hampton had a big hand in that. John's a good friend of ours, and he helped us a lot in that, and he knew. And so you got all Silver Run Preserve being built down there, and it's 5.5 miles from the main station, so they were out of the district.
Okay.
All of Found Forest is out. And there's so many local people that live down there.
Sure.
And I really like to help the local.
Yes.
And
Yes,
it's more of a business
Absolutely.
deal with those summer homes, but
Yeah.
the local people with money in their pockets. So
that's right.
we want to get, the next thing we do is go down there and build a firehouse.
Great.
So
That's so good.
They'll save more in insurance premiums than they'll pay in fire tax.
that's right, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Especially going from class 10 to 5.
You go to a 10 to a 5, they'll save more in premiums than they'll pay in fire tax.
That's great.
So talking about fire tax, if you take, Chief Dillard's gone through, talked about the increase in personnel, increase in debt, things of that nature, the things they're looking to achieve over the next 4 years. So you can see the budget going from 1.156 to 1.789 million. So what I'd asked, I briefly brought this up before, I'd asked Ms. Fox to go through and put together what that would mean in regards to the fire tax itself. And so what I'll do is just turn it over to Ms. Fox. And so what you see is if you go back and look at the values that were presented, you can see the current value versus the new value. And then ultimately, I'll just let Ms. Fox go. You can see the old budget, current budget versus the new budget, and let her explain what you're looking at.
Okay. The first column is the current year, 2021. The current value, the current tax rate is 2.33 cents. And the budget requested was 1.2 million. And then we took the 18.45% increase for the value and moved into 21-22. The tax rate with the requested budget of the 1.789 would be 2.94 cents per hundred. So that's not a big tax increase for the amount of funding that it's going to provide.
Basically,
And
some
that would
millage
cover
rate
their
is
budget?
slightly increased, but
Wow,
the value increase is what helped offset this.
Oh, yeah.
that's wonderful.
And also the tax collection rate, it went from 97.8% to 98.13%. So that allowed us to budget more of the money.
Exactly.
That's a huge. Thank you, Tabitha.
Brandy, that's Brandy.
Oh, Brandy.
Brandy's working hard down there.
Thank you, Brandy.
And we are seeing an increase in motor vehicles too, so that amount could increase in the next month or so.
Now, if a person's residence, say, is in Georgia and they live in Atlanta, then they don't pay, and they own a home here, they don't pay their car tax here, do they?
No.
Okay, that's, okay.
And one key thing to note, and I'm sure that it may not be just apparent to the people paying the fire tax. The fire tax, whatever is collected, this is all estimates, correct? We estimate what the collection rate's gonna be, we estimate we have value, and then at the end of the day, during the audit process, we find out exactly what was collected. And also, sometimes you spend a little more money, sometimes you spend a little less money. One of the key components is this tax that is collected has to go towards the fire department operations, the cash receivable fire department operation. This is something that Chief Diller and I had worked and talked about for the last couple of years. Basically, occasionally if there's more monies collected than anticipated, it goes into a fund balance, it rolls over to next year. And those are the types of things that will be available for next year's expenditures for the fire department. And those are the types of things that allows the fire department to deal with unexpected costs. And so ultimately, I think the whole point of me saying this is that 100% of what's collected from this tax goes to fire operations.
That's right.
I'm trying to do the math here. I'm having a little trouble. I'm sorry about that to my 8th grade math teacher, Miss Higdon. But it would go up 0, 0, 0 and place that 2 in the 0 and it'd be 6, right? But because it's going up from 23 to 29. So I just rounded to a 0.0006. Is that correct? And on $2,000, how much would that be increase? A $2,000 property value.
For 5 years.
That's higher math than me.
Point is 339.
2,000.
Yeah, about $2,000 if you had a value of your property and home.
2,000?
That's 600.
I mean, the tax, I'm talking about tax.
If it's like 100,000, you're talking about a difference of,
0.006.
what, $23 and $29?
Yeah.
Roundabout?
For 100,000.
$6 on
$600 on 100,000.
You're good.
Okay.
But
Well,
going back to your question, though, if you bought the car in North Carolina and you tagged it in North Carolina and left it at your mountain home, you'd pay North Carolina.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
because
we
some
have- we
people
have a
do
lot of
that.
vehicles that people
They do
They
that,
leave the
okay.
vehicle.
If you live in Georgia
Yeah.
and you just leave the car in North Carolina, it would have a North Carolina
Same
tag.
thing with the
Yeah.
boat. If you
Okay,
left your boat here.
okay,
in Whitney,
good.
Lake Normal, it would be.
So that's gonna give us some more revenue there.
Yes.
Okay.
And currently on the rate, 1 cent would equal $502,870. The new rate would equal with the bay, $597,677.
Almost $100,000 more dollars for it.
Isn't that something?
Can I
Wow.
ask something?
Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
If somebody in Georgia or wherever owns a mountain house up in Cashers, but they're not a full-time resident, are they gonna have to pay that fire tax?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You own property. It's
Yes,
based on property, correct?
They will pay the fire tax.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I don't want to cut anything short.
Yeah, anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, any other board members?
My mind's made up.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Chief Dillard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
So moving on to Chief Green. And so currently right now, where we currently have a fire tax implemented in Jackson County is in the Cashers Glenville Volunteer Fire Department area, and then also the Highlands area. That is what was pointed out earlier. And
Well,
so,
let me interrupt you. Will we hear anything from Highlands? Will there be any additional requests from Highlands?
no, that'll be third down. If you look here, you've got your budget in there, and we'll have this brief conversation about how.
Okay, so yeah, I see it now. Never mind.
So having said that, we obviously here at their nice facility here, their new facility, and I'll recognize Chief Green to just make his presentation to the board.
Thank you. And I want to say again, I appreciate each and every one of you being here today. And also myself, along with all the members of the fire department, really appreciate what you allowed us to do and build this nice facility for Sullivan. We sat down and we done our homework a long, long time before we ever sat down and talked to an architect. We went as far as Salisbury, Winston-Salem, looking at different buildings and designing it. And we feel like we need to build a building not just for today, but for the future, you know,
Yeah.
hoping to sustain 50+ years. So I want to really appreciate it. I'm gonna read a little letter on history. I don't know if it's up on there. Yeah, it is. Put some thoughts together. There's a picture out front, I don't know if y'all seen it or not, but it goes back to 1956. Got the first fire truck and then standing in front of it. But Cullowhee Fire Department served with pride and freshmen for residents and visitors of Cullowhee and Jackson County for over 60 years. It may go back further than that, but I haven't been able to dig up any history. What started as a small station on the ground to WCU, and as well, to my knowledge, they also had a little fire department over on the old Cullowhee Road, this little 2-bay block building out near the Mincy development.
Oh.
But anyway, we currently have 6 engines, 4 tankers, 3 brush trucks, a ladder truck, 3 service vehicles, and 4 other fire department vehicles and 34 members. This growth of the department is based on the needs of the community. I just done a 6-year statistics from 2014 to 2020. We answered 4,944 calls for service, requiring the volunteers to put in 24,820 hours of their time. These hours did not include over 25,000 training hours that they participated in, whether here or going away to fire schools. On a daily average, the fire department responds approximately 2.5 calls a day, with an average of 3 hours per day given by each volunteer, which this is a volunteer at the top of the already busy lives. And families. Currently, 1/3 of our members are served by the community for over 20 years. Several of them are approaching 40-year mark, and we also have some that's been here getting ready to be 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And are still active. So that right there speaks a whole lot. With this type of demand, and the people are not volunteering today at the rate they have been in the past. With the average training time, someone, that's working a full-time job, and a lot of people work 2 jobs, it takes roughly 5 years to fully get certified as a professional. To handle the required job at the rate of the turnover of certified members is not keeping up with the demand. Our continuous hard work over the last decade leads us to obtain a Class 5 rating, which is achieved in the last year. The rating is done to the State Fire Marshal's Office. Prior to this rating, the Fire Department was Class 6, and prior to that, held an 9F. The significance of the rating relates directly to what our residents pay in homeowners insurance. The Class 5 reduced the cost of the insurance. But by keeping the rating, every year does require many things that must be documented and maintained. We are required to maintain a certain number of stations and substations, the required amount of maintained fire apparatus, required number of certified members, response times, required the number of training hours each member must meet. Testing of over 236 fire hydrants in our district, which TWASA does not do. And if WCU is very good, they always test our hydrants on campus, but if their plumbing shop don't never get around to them, then we have to go do those as well, and there's approximately 200 hydrants on campus at WCU that we have to test as well. Plus, we have to maintain and test 24 water points that we have out in the rural districts where there's no hydrants in the area. Plus, we also have to keep up over 626 pre-plans per year. The fire department is currently has 1 paid member that works during the day, during the week. When a call for service pays out, this person will usually have a truck and route within 2 minutes. On nights and weekends, when the station is unmanned, the average response time for the first truck out the door can be approximately 10 minutes. This is due to a member having to come from home or work. 8 minutes can mean the big difference between life or death situation, difference losing the room and contents fire or the whole house. Having a full-time paid staff and members also allows to service the community by giving the staff response to all emergency medical calls, whereas now we respond only to the dire medical calls. Our goal for the last 6 years has been to serve the community to the best of our ability to the utmost professionalism. We as a department have accomplished that goal. However, to continue to serve the community in a fashion that deserves and we feel have no other choice but to request or approval for allowing us to receive a fire district tax. We understand the true financial magnitude of the tax we have on our residents, and we are making this request without due diligence and extreme thoughtfulness. By having a paid volunteer fire department, we will not only be financially able to maintain current service, but we'll be able to improve on it. Our paid members will be available 24/7, 365 days a year. The response times will be significantly lowered and maintained at a minimum. It will also ensure that the required maintenance of the station and equipment, certified personnel, and training is met to ensure that we maintain or improve our Class 5 state rating. Our members will and continue to be the backbone of the department. This will also allow them to continue to serve the community with excessive demand of their time and families. Don, if you would, could you click on the 5 seconds count in the YouTube? This is about a 2.5 minute video. I'd like for y'all to see. Some of you are familiar and some may not be.
Okay, are we ready?
Yes. Come on, 2 minutes into it, and it's about where if you were sleeping, your smoke detector would wake you up.
Wake up.
And they would make the call. You know, you add another 7 or 8 minutes onto that, you're into that 10 minutes.
Books burned, so. That's less than 3 minutes. Look at that.
Hard to believe. Wow. Look at it. Less than 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
That's reading we, not minutes count, but seconds count. You seen those superheated gases, once they start building up in that room, that's just like throwing gas in there. I've seen it, Brian's seen it, Wolf's seen it, Miranda's seen it. Go south in a hurry.
Is this part of the video?
No, sir. No, you can stop. That's Terry Williams. Terry's already there.
And you know, the other thing, I'll just add to what Chief Green said. Times have changed.
Yes.
Construction methods have changed. Room and contents have changed. And that has changed the way fire behaves.
It sure has.
You take a fire 50 years ago, room and contents, you got traditional sofa made out of wood frame, probably got some kind of straw or some kind of padding in it.
Horsehair.
It's all natural fiber.
Yeah.
It doesn't burn as hot. It doesn't create the kind of temperatures or toxic smoke that you saw in that video. Doesn't get near as hot. Your structures were built out of solid wood beams. My house built in 52, got two by 12 hemlock timbers underneath it. They're just as solid as they can be. But you go in our house today, when you do an inspection, and it's got engineered I-beams, which is basically sawdust and glue, and a 2x2 on each side of it. The fire load rating on that beam is 15 minutes and it fails. So 15 minutes is not a lot of time. And so when you throw this in a room and content fire that in 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes, is already spread to the rest of the house, and you're starting, by the time the fire department can get there in some of these cases, it's gone. It's beyond life, survivability is gone. It's beyond even making an interior attack on some of them because of the contents, the way these things burn. So it's it is, it's much more dangerous than most people think about.
Oh, it sure is. It sure is. And also it goes to, you know, like each department having one man during the day, like I say, everybody having to come from work or home, or wherever. You can get a truck there, but theoretically, unless somebody's there to help you, pull a line and start squirting water, but you know, the rule of thumb, 3 in, 3 out, and you wait for all those people to get there. You know, that's a lot of time you have to sit there and wait. You can get by with 2, send 2 in if you can get somebody to stand at the door, you know, make sure they come back out. But it's really a safety issue.
Yeah.
On being safe, sending people in. And also, the last 6 years, I've done an average. We run 824 calls a year on a 6-year average, the last 6 years. That's a lot of calls for volunteer fire department, and having to leave work, their families. And before the COVID hit, we was averaging 15 to 17 calls a weekend. But then when the COVID come along, that kind of, or school's been out a lot, you know, you have less people around, less students, less wrecks, less fire alarms. God knows we have plenty of those. But Randy has his fair share as well. But everybody gets vaccinated, this is gonna turn back around, everybody's gonna get back busy again. You know, we get back on track and our numbers will jump right back up to where they was before it slowed down in March. And also on our grants, 2 years ago, we had the finance for 4 new air packs and fire bottles, which is over $385,000. We applied for grants every year, and just kept getting denied because, you know, what I do, the grants started dwindling down, cutting back. And that was a pretty good hit for us, $385,000. Today, it's about $13,000 if we put a volunteer on. If you figure an air pack, pager, radio, turnout gear, that's about as cheap as you can buy. We used to sit around and talk about it being really bad to have to put one on for $7,500, and then it just seemed like you turn around like, Jesus, where's time went? It jumped up the price. And also, we're kind of centralizing the county. We run mutual aid for basically every department in Jackson County but one. We average about 70 to 75 calls a year, some more, some less, of running mutual aid for another department. And we cover to the South Carolina line from here, running mutual aid, and that's a pretty good clip. Leave out here and go on a structure if I were Randy to the South Carolina line, or the Transylvania County line, or the Macon County line.
Or the Haywood.
Or the Haywood County with Brian. I mean, we can log a lot of mileage in 1 year just running mutual aid with other departments. We've got one truck out here that we pretty much, it's the mutual aid truck, we call it. It runs all over the county. And it's got 3 times the mileage on it as a lot of departments have got on the main end, because we run it everywhere. And you're talking about savings there a minute ago, myself and Cammie, when we dropped down to a 5, we got we're Farm Bureau, and we save $175 a year just for dropping 1 point on our homeowners insurance. And I know I heard Chet in there talking, he got, he was right at $200 saving on his homeowners.
Oh, that's great.
Just 1 point. So that's a big savings by just going down 1 point. And also, you know, we've got, we need to get into a rotation somehow or another on replacing trucks. Brian knows how hard it is, and Randy. I always heard my grandpa say, back when I was hanging around with him when I was little. "Oh, I wish it was tomorrow. Well, I can't wait till Saturday gets here." He'd say, "Son," he said, "don't be thinking about that." I said, "One of these days, time will be flying faster than you want it to." Like, yeah, boy. He was
That's
right.
right.
It seems like you turn around and summer's gone and it's winter and then it's back to spring again. Our trucks, we're gonna have to start doing the rollover, here one of these days, and we've got about 7 right now. Some are, 2 of them are 28 years old, and 5 of them are 22 years old. We've got to get into a rotation somehow or another to start replacing some trucks, and they ain't cheap, it's 350 to a $500,000, just depending on what you want to need for an engine or a tanker, so. We also got a larger facility. It's gonna take more upkeep, excuse me, to take care of it. So we really need to figure out some way to staff this facility 24/7 for the community. Terry, he's been crunching the numbers for a long time, and I feel like what he's come up with as a proposal is about as sharp and as true as it can be. I, for one, I don't want my taxes to go up, and I don't want my mama's taxes to go up. But, it's come a time that we've got to figure out somehow or another we need more funding. We're hurting bad.
So Chief, I've got the budget up behind you.
Yes.
Could somebody just, as far as the request goes, we can see how you got it broken out for this initial column here, and then obviously the additions for personnel and so forth. But if somebody would just, you don't have to necessarily go line by line, but just to summarize what we're looking at here.
Paul, good job.
Well, I'm going to start off the summarization with this past year, 2019, during the COVID thing, since we did come back to the budget. I sat down and what we needed just to scrap by this year was $544,000. Of that, we were going to have to raise $270,000 in fundraisers. We're going to be close due to a couple of things where we come in with the donations. But I'm afraid that's a one-time deal. But I'm like Randy on your fuel. There's no way we can I think you said, Randy, it's $3 and what in Casters today?
Well, it was $3.04 when I left. It might be like $3.20 by now.
Oh, my goodness.
And down here, it's a little less than that, but it's still getting close to 3. That's something you gotta play with. The figures that you see up here are basically for a 5-year estimate. I know our phone bill's running around 7 now. Utilities is gonna be about 15. That's not only here, that's counting the other 3 substations and also the VFW building that we took over a couple of 3 years ago for the community. The equipment maintenance, fire equipment, for the last 5 or 6 years, we have not done what we used to do prior to that, buying 5 sets of turnout gear each year because our money got shot. We couldn't afford it. So we bought as needed Well, that's starting to catch up with us now. FEMA grants are hard to get. There's a lot goes out, but there's nothing comes to these local volunteer fire departments in FEMA. Every once in a while we get, well, it's been 3 or 4 years since we've actually been able to secure a FEMA grant.
Yes.
Then we have another grant that is North Carolina Firemen's Association, or the state grant. It's a 50-50 match. Well, if we get $5,000, we can't match it. Right, we have to watch our budget. Then stepping on down, the block of employment expenditures, that is solely based on exactly 8 people, full-time employees. And this came from the experience of Randy Dillard for the last 5 years. Actually, our bookkeeper is the same person. Then we do carry a cancer insurance policy on our farm.
I'm sorry, before we jump in that, Chief, if you would, so this really is the core of the request right here, full-time. Can we just talk a little bit about what that means for service? And so how many people we run, what does 8 people mean? I mean, is it 2 here, 4 here today? Just tell us what that means.
4 a day, 24, 48 shift. We're trying to have 4 on shift during the week, during the day, 2 of a night, and 2 on the weekends, running 24/7.
So when a call comes in, how many does it take to run? Just explain to us how this helps with service and how many, so a call comes in, how many people you gotta be here to start with? So just
During the day, those same 4 people will also be stationed at each building. They will be able to roll an engine and a tanker from the building or one of the substations, be able to roll an engine and a tanker. Like during the day, I just kind of have to pick what I've got to take because I'm on one here. I either have to take an engine or a tanker, and then hopefully somebody's going to be there to assist as well. And also we can up our medical calls back up to where we can start running more med calls because we're cut back now. Back to right now we've just been running traumatic injuries and 9 echo calls, but we could go back and start running more of our medical calls because we have the personnel to actually take care of those during the day. And it was at one time, and I meant to look at these statistics and see, Cullowhee was carrying the highest numbers of medical calls, our Cullowhee area, Tuckasegee, and as it was in the county. So that's one reason we had to train back on medical calls because it's absolutely wearing our people out.
So what I'm trying to do, the reason, just remember, you're not really talking to me. What I'm trying to do is get out of it, what does it mean for our service improvement? So realize we're on YouTube, we got the media here. Just so you know, all these questions are just trying to talk about service improvement.
Yeah, right.
So actually, I'm a Colby resident, so I'm a Colby resident, all right? So what does that mean for me? I'm just trying to understand. So when you say medical, if I'm at home, I'm having medical problems, I dial 911, what does that mean for me?
You'll have a quicker response. Same way on a fire call. Your response times will be cut back from 8 to 10 minutes to 2 minutes. You'll have a truck on the road. As well as property loss, that'll be cut back. We'll be able to have a better service to our community.
So that's all I'm trying to do, is just get that out, and start talking about it. It's beyond these numbers. The whole point of this is obviously relief for the volunteers, but at the end of the day, it's response time.
Absolutely.
One of the most important things we found out, not only is the 2 people get the engine tanker out or whatever, if we go to a fire, we get a good knockdown on that fire, Brian knows all about what you're facing, and that's when the work starts.
Yeah.
And so when we get back to the building, get everything mopped up, our volunteers can go on home take a shower and go to work, because you've got paid guys there to clean up all the equipment. One of the biggest things about firefighting is the mess afterwards, and we've got guys there that's there. And Tim Bradley is over at the North Carolina Firefighters Association. I was telling him, I said, you know, we were able to get a washer and dryer, and when we go to a structure fire, our volunteers that fight fire have 2 sets of gear, so they come back by the building, drop their gear off, and the paid guys are washing for them. He said, you're lying. He said, you're telling me that your paid staff wash the volunteers' gear? I said, certainly they do, and they're proud to, because they're there. And so our
That's great.
volunteers come to the fire, they help put the fire out, then they can go home, get ready to go to work and go to their jobs, and that helps the volunteers so much more. I mean, you're not just adding paid guys, you're helping your volunteers 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And then do their gear for them and have it ready, they come by and pick it up. And just things like that you would never think of are some of the biggest advantages you're gonna have by having your paid people there. And we've seen a lot of things we never imagined before that just makes a big difference. And it helps your volunteers, they'll come more.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back to the house and check it. Well, you got people there to go check it. So your volunteers don't have to come out of work and go check it again. Some of those big houses you go back to 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chiefs,
That's a great
those
point.
calls that
Thank
you
you.
said each of your districts went out, that does not include vehicles, accidents, does it?
Yeah, ours is total calls.
Both, okay.
And the other thing I want to interject on what they're talking about, what Don asked, by putting on a full staff, I would give anything in the world if some people could follow him for a week. What? This one man taking care and maintenance of 3 substations, which some of us get out and help where we can. But, and the work that one man does in here, he's doing the work of 4 or 5. It cuts down on that. One of our substations is 16 miles from this front door. And it takes longer to drive the last 5 miles than it does the rest of it.
The other first 11.
Right.
You've ever been there.
And, but that sounds bad, but it's not. That's figured on from Tuckasegee to a 5-mile station in Tuckasegee or whatever. Most time it's man's gear. But the calls you get, the people asking questions, the phones, insurance companies, Tim takes out time to do all that, plus what he's got to get done, which Brian is aware of that part of it, and more, most of us are. We just need the extra people, somewhere along the road, and plus expenses has gone up. I maybe scatterbrained there, but I'll go ahead.
I joined in 1987. That right there is the cost for 1987. That's the reports. 123. There are 2 papers per call. That right there today is 1 month.
Oh, my goodness.
See the difference? 1 year versus 1 month. And
Paperwork.
I have to put in way more time than I show trying to keep up with things. Like I said, people work 2, a lot of people working 2 and some working 3 jobs. And they just don't have the time to commit to the fire department like we did when we joined.
Correct.
25, 30 years ago. They can't. They have time to answer the call when they can. They come to the Monday night meetings and do the training when they can, but the rest of it that goes on with it today is really, really hard for the volunteers to find time to help do what needs to be done.
And I've been here since 1985.
And for somebody to be able to pick up the phone and just call the fire department 24 hours a day for a little problem without, a lot of the old people, they don't want to call 911. That's their last resort. They'll call me on my cell phone or they'll call the phone here, Yeah,
Yeah.
they will.
Now, Chief Green, if we were able to hire these people, would they be able to help with some of this paperwork? That to me would be overwhelming. But, so it would not just be that they do the calls, they would help with some of the upkeep, paperwork.
Randy Dillon, how do you?
Is that true for you all as well?
Oh, yeah.
Prime
Great.
example,
I'm
he's our
still
showman.
like Tim, I still do my own fire reports, because if you've ever been on the witness stand, you won't know what's in it. But, you know, I do every fire report, but they just do so much. Having 4 of a day, one reason it's so good to have 4 of a day, we will put 2 of our people on Tuesday in a truck, send them to Bree Love and Sapphire, get the trucks out, drive them around town, clean the building, wash the trucks, fuel them up, mow the grass. It's a big job.
Sure.
And they do that on Tuesday. Wednesdays, they go to Yellow Mountain and Glenville. Then we have a truck at the squad that do the same. Mondays, we check trucks and cashers. Thursday's floor day. They were mopping when I left and cashers. And we've got chores every day.
That's great.
But I was like Tim, I was there by myself for several years. And
Yeah.
when you get on Yellow Mountain and you get a fire in the Sapphire, you might as well come from Silver.
Yeah.
And if he's at Bear Lake, I could be here quicker from cashers. So it's just so much better to have the help where you can divide up.
Yes,
go do your chores.
That sounds good.
And there's so much to do with all these trucks now. You know, they've got a big fleet of trucks and we've got 25 and they all have to be checked,
Sure.
kept up. So
Thank
that's the
you.
reason you want the day people.
Yes, thank you.
It's responsibility of the driver when he goes out on the call and comes back in to make sure that truck is right for the next call. But sometimes he may overlook something. Even after we have a structure fire, we come back in, everybody gets everything back in shape and ready to go. But the next morning when I come in, I go back over everything because something can be missed.
Sure.
You want everything right.
Does the Department of Insurance, I know back 4 or 5 years ago, we were going back and forth with Raleigh on getting more money because you guys are the only volunteer police firefighters that cover a state university. And have they done anything in the way of monies in the last 4 years?
No.
How much do they give a year?
Last year, our last check we received, which was in June of 2020, was $100,430, which was up compared to prior to that. Well, prior to that, it was 90-some thousand. This year, I've been 2 weeks trying to get an answer how much that check will be this year.
So that's a one-time check for the year.
Used to be quarterly. And we used to get it in, when they got down to doing it once a year, we used to get it in February or March. And like I said, after several calls, we received it June the 13th.
Terry?
I had truck payments due June the 20th.
Terry, do you recall what the value is being protected there? For some reason, I got about 450 in my mind. But
It's somewhere, I've not done since revaluation, but it's somewhere, it's that or maybe closer to $500,000.
maybe close to $500,000. So, well,
3 or 4 years ago, the foundation stepped up because they own some of this state stuff or sitting on state property. And we've got we get about $18,000 from the foundation. This year, this one will come online, the big apartment building. We call it the erosion control apartments. But, I'm sorry, I'll have to call her. But, that will come online with the 18,000. We lost 2 buildings on campus, the 2 dorms. So that's the reason I say this state money, the check this year will go down for a year or 2. You can figure around 100,000 a year now, I guess.
Yeah, but they
that's what
own
we
this
did.
one.
And that's not, and truthfully, that is not, I don't think Western North Carolina, and I'm gonna say it, Western North Carolina, is getting its fair share of this piece of pie for the state colleges. And there's some other people, and we are working on that. Hoping to meet with the General Assembly, Kevin, and a couple of more, to see if we can't somehow or another get the fair share over here.
So, follow through, Commissioner Jones, what the state has, they have a whole list of state properties, university properties, all sorts of state property, and they have a value statewide, and then the state allocates a certain amount of money to just be used for fire protection. Basically, it's donations to volunteer fire and full-time fire departments. And so ultimately, the reason I wanted to point out the 450 million is a couple of things. One is if you look at the total value, this taxable value in Coley is about 900, it's close to $1 billion. And after the revow, it does go to almost 1.2 billion. But there's also
We don't have.
several, it should be at the beginning. This was part of Miss Ash's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Front.
Mhm.
And so what she done is she broke out the real property value, and this is real property value, that includes the motor vehicles. This is property value of these different fire districts.
Okay.
And so when you look at Coloway currently now, before revaluation goes in, again, this doesn't include it doesn't include motor vehicles and other things. It's 995 million. And that's the reason I was mentioning to Terry that the university property, the last number I see, that's the reason I was asking Terry if you remember, it was at least 400 million. Was it not? Okay. So I'm trying to show you, when you look, this matters. The reason this matters is because when this board starts having a conversation about justification of moving forward, about one of the things you got to look at is density and look at things of that nature. And these will all be part of our future conversations. But the state, we got about, let's just use 400 million. I think that's a nice conservative number for the state. 400 million in value there. They're providing about 100,000. Now, WCU did step up, right, and give a little bit, they gave an additional allocation, correct?
Yes.
What you
The
were mentioning.
foundation,
The foundation gave an additional, how much was that again?
it's 18,000.
18,000. So what's happening from the state is providing about 100, and between the state and the foundation is about 118,000 to provide fire service for about, let's just use $400 million value.
Yeah.
And so that's just what the numbers are at this point. And so when you go to a state, Mr. Ash did mention something that long-term could be a strategy to try to work with our state legislature is either you have to argue that the value is higher, right? Meaning that because that's one of the conversations, Terry, you and I had, that we thought that they kind of undervalued that. And the reason that's important is because if you recall how I said the state works, they got all these university properties and state properties, and they just have a pot of money that they divided up based upon the value. So if you have more value in your university, you'll get a higher percentage of the pot of money. So one avenue to try to increase that is to try to argue or increase the value of that property. The other argument, and this is probably not easier, but probably a better path to take, is to try to get the state to put more money into the pot for fire protection.
Correct.
And what that does, that helps all fire departments because, this is also the same system used to help provide protection for other state properties too. So long-term strategy is try to get the state to provide more money for fire protection.
And we are in an area, our area, Callaway Fire District. The amount of tax exempt properties is exorbitant.
Oh, yeah.
I know over a couple of years ago, I think, and I didn't figure it out this year, we're talking $514 million, back then. And it even comes down to us, because our value back when this was, I figured this, we had $1,735,250. We're tax exempt. That's $1 million. Well, there's a lot of others. Jackson County School,
Sure.
Jackson County, Duke Energy, 26 properties, $6 million. That's not that, this is prior to revaluation.
No, Duke Energy's not tax exempt, are they?
They're
Well,
taxed to the
they're
state.
PayPal, or not PayPal, what is it called?
They're public service companies. Yeah.
We do get maybe a $500 check once in a while, or $250, I think. Twassa owns 7 pieces of property. Back then, $1,294,000. No, nothing on that. You got your postal service, you got US Forest Service, $83 million, US Forest Service, Blue Ridge Parkway, Blue Ridge Watershed, Nature Conservatory, North Carolina Department of Transportation. The list goes on and on and on. Cemeteries, churches, and that takes away from what we can be taxed on, don't I, correct?
Yeah.
And I think it's over 500, maybe this year.
Can I say something on the Department of Insurance information? When I do provide the report to them, I do include all the exempt property value as well.
Oh, good.
It's helping a little, but yeah,
Sure.
I do give them that value. It doesn't sound like they're giving you much back in return, but I do make sure and give. So probably would be probably closer to 1.7 million or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think, I'm
value.
underestimating 400 million. I believe 400 million, I'm talking about exempt is an underestimated number.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to be
Sure.
safe in
Yeah.
my numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do
Western.
give that though to Department of Insurance to make sure that we get as much value as
So
possible.
coming back to the budget.
Yeah.
This is a proposed budget for this coming fiscal year.
Yes.
And I saw, and then looking, there's the one column on the left, which is pretty much all your expenses minus personnel, and then the column on the right would include personnel. And then the bottom number is 1.2 million. And then if we flip on over to the proposed tax rate sheet, then we see the breakdown of what potential taxes might need to be to pay for that. The one question on building, on the proposed budget worksheet, you show debt service building 54,000. What is that one for?
That is for the furniture, the flooring, the whatever we could charge with finances. We're paying $4,500 a month for that. That will pay itself off in 2 years, I believe. And we're already a long way into it.
So that
They handle the
54,000.
financing. That's one of the pieces that was over that 3.8 million.
Okay, all right. And then going back then to the 2021, 2022 fire tax rate slide, we have 2 columns, and I guess Darlene's going to explain those like she did the other.
The first column is taking his budget and adding the debt for this building to it. That'd be $1,413,000. So that rate would be 12.05 cents per $100. If we didn't add the debt for this building, the rate would be 10.35 cents. Based on the proposed value for the current year. 1 cent would equal $117,486. So you could possibly reduce that tax rate by 1 cent from the money that they would get from WCU. Because it's not factored into these numbers.
Okay.
And at this point, we haven't factored any motor vehicles in either. So that could affect the rate,
By 1 or 2 pennies.
possibly.
All I can say is we're at a point in Colway, North Carolina, Colway Volunteer Fire Department, that we have to have more money somewhere. And we can't depend on donations. We can't at this point in time. Like right now, we're March. In our county budget, we've got $2,500 till April 15th, when we get our 4th quarter allotment. In our community account, which all donations and anything else goes into, which we pay bills out of, we've got $15,000. I am at this time holding or set aside $20,000 for 2 bills. One is the insurance bill, which we already have the money, but it's there whenever they call to have the truck repaired. And then the other one is where we had our certain trucks on our regular service, cost us $10,000. Which we have, we're not broke, but it won't take much more to break us. We have $100,000 in CDs that we have had since 2005, that a family, called the Lee family, that had the drugstore or whatever over here on Main and at Western, left us in their will. We still have that $100,000 that they left us in the will. We use the interest of that. Looks like we're going to have to start tapping that. Over my time, and Darlene can vouch for it because I talked to her quite a bit about it. I try to stay within the budget here at the department the best I can, or the best advice to do. And keep a contingency fund. And we've built that over the years, but in the last 5-6 years, we've had to take $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, and we've dwindled our build up. But we have to come up somehow to raise what we're getting. And I think the fire tax, I used to be against it. I mean, I had my doubts. But the more I got to dealing with all this, looking at the property owners and what we have out here, there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's $200 million worth of apartment complexes. Normally, this is a high figure. Off of that $200 million, we get $1,000 donation. Some of them makes no donation. $100 is not a fire equal share. Not to us ones that pay our taxes yearly. We have people out there that we've done good. And some will make the donation. But you know, I mail out 3,700 letters to those 6,000 property owners. And we're getting back about 10% of it with a donation, which is $25, $50. Not like Randy, he get 50,000.
Easy.
Easy. That generates about $30,000 this time. But anyway, that's where we're at on it. And I beg of that we're at that point.
Okay.
And I hate to say it. I kind of figured my fire tax on my piece of property or what I own is the tax value is $350,000. So at 10 cents, I'm gonna have $350 tax bill, roughly. So look what they've saved me, the fire department and my insurance premiums. I mean, it all comes back.
Okay.
But anyway, that's another.
That $200 million apartment property, they would be, I know that some
I'm
of
gonna
them,
be off on that figure.
well, just for discussion. Even though some of those are on state property, would they be subject to the fire tax? They would not.
No, they come through the foundation.
Okay.
But the ones that are not on state property, they do
Right.
pay. Okay.
If it's on state property, it does not pay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if we quickly do Highlands and the board wants to take a break.
Yeah.
And we can come back and talk about next steps and things
Okay.
of that nature.
Yes.
That's okay. So if you go down, I did ask Darlene did reach out to the Highlands Volunteer Fire Department, and this should be quick. Their request has remained the same. And so Darlene did the evaluation on the potential tax rate for their request of the 84,000.
They requested 84,000 for the next 4 years. So they would see a decrease from 3.05 cents to 2.72 cents.
So past that, if you see next on the agenda, of course, myself, I do have a memo in the board about just fire tax methods of implementation and talking about if the board chose to move forward, what the processes would be, but if we want to take a little break.
Yeah, let's take about a 15-minute recess, restrooms. We'll come back.
Hey.
I was trying to see if Holly was still on here.
She went off a while ago. She may be on YouTube though.
I was gonna make a point, but that point was solely for the newspaper. I'll call her and let her know. All right, so the next item of discussion, I have a memo in your packets, and basically what the memo is discussing is potential method if the board chooses to proceed forward with a fire tax for the Colway Fire District, then these are methods that can be used to continue with this conversation. So what I'm doing in the memo, I'm just trying to discuss that there are basically 3 taxing methods that this board can take a look at when you're trying to fund fire operations. The first method is general property taxes. And so that is just general property taxes used for all of the public functions. You currently do use general property taxes to fund fire operations in Jackson County. You know, the only ones that you're not doing general property taxes for is currently the Cashler-Glenville Volunteer Fire Department and the Highlands. Everybody else falls under your general taxation authority. So currently right now, you can see that you currently uses general taxation to fund 6 fire departments. These include, as of now, Colby Volunteer Fire Department, Silva Volunteer Fire Department, Savannah, Balsam, Canada, and Qualla. The county will expend $1,555,470 in current fiscal year 2021 supporting these fire operations. So, and this is something that Commissioner Jones and I was discussing during the break. Out of that 1.55 million, about 435 of it is directly related to Colby. That's their operations, the personnel costs, and then the debt. So that all falls under this $1.55 million. Okay. And
Say that again.
So if you go look at the fire budget, we don't have a fire budget in here. The fire budget is really in our budget. It encompasses all the allocations. It's the debt for Savannahville, the debt for this building, your annual allocation, so forth. So for Colby Volunteer Fire Department, Jackson County currently funds approximately, is 435? You want to, someone in there? What is it?
Right, it's 425,000.
Okay, 425,000. So what that includes is, Mr. Green's, you know, the paid person that's here. That includes, I'm talking about for Colby, that includes the debt that's for this building. And then that also includes the annual allocation that is given to Colby Volunteer Fire Department for their operations.
Okay.
So you do have your general property taxation authority. And then the other method is creating a fire service district. And currently, this is the methodology that's used to fund the Cashler-Glenville Fire Department and also the Highlands Fire Department. So, you know, ultimately, one of the points you try to make when you do general property taxation is there is a rule that taxation has to be uniform across the county. And the General Assembly makes some exceptions to that uniform requirement. And that's what we're really talking about right now is a service district. A service district is one of those exceptions that you can create a district and then obviously apply another tax. And so that's really what the first paragraph is really talking about. So when you look at the basic methodology to establish a fire service district, the next page is really the steps that need to take place. So if the board considers under this method to do a fire tax in Colby, what you need to do is you have to consider the following items on number 1. One is the residential seasonal population and population density in a proposed district, okay? So these are things you take into consideration. The appraised value of property subject to taxation, the present tax rates of the county, the ability of the proposed district to sustain additional taxes necessary to support the fire service program, and then any other matters that you deem appropriate as you're trying to make these decisions. The next thing that the board would have to do is you can establish a service district if upon the information evidence you receive or discuss, you find that all of the following applies. And that would be A, that there's a demonstrable need for providing one or more of the services in the district. That it's impossible and practical to provide the services on a countywide basis. That is economically feasible to provide the proposed services in the district without unreasonable or burdensome annual tax levies. And D, that there is a demand for the proposed services by persons residing in a proposed district. So those are the findings that this board would need to make. 3, the Board of Commissioners must also cause to be created a report containing the following information. A map of the proposed district showing the proposed boundaries, a statement showing that the proposed districts meet the standards and findings discussed that were above, and a plan providing the proposed fire service. This report will have to be made available for public inspection in the office, in Angie's office, and the clerk to the board, at least 4 weeks before a date of a public hearing. And then the final step would be, or not the final step, the next step would be the Board of Commissioners will have to hold a public hearing prior to adopting a resolution creating the service district. And the hearing would have to have the following. You'd have to just basically advertise the hearing not less than 1 week before the hearing. The notice would have to state the time, date, place, things of that nature, but it also would contain the subject matter, a map of the proposed district, a statement that the report referenced above that we're discussing is available for public inspection at the office of the clerk to the board. Past that, in addition to the notice, you have to mail out at least 4 weeks prior to the public hearing to all residents of the proposed district shown on county tax records. And then 5, after the public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners may consider a resolution establishing the fire service district. The resolution defining the service district shall take effect at the beginning of fiscal year commencing after you pass it. The actual tax rate for the service district are actually adopted during your normal budget process. So everything we just described is creating the district. Actually passing the tax rate is the same way you would do it with, that you've been doing with Cashiers and Highlands, and that's during our normal budget process. I just go on to state here that we have established 2 districts, Glenville Cashiers and Highlands, and we currently contract with those fire departments to provide those services in those districts. So I do want to mention a couple things on this right here. This is something we could go back and review how this was done if the board wishes to proceed forward in Cashiers, Glenville, and also in Highlands. But in my mind, and these are simpler done than it just sounds when you look at it. If you have to determine that there's a need for providing one of the services in the district, fire services pretty easy to determine that you need. If you look at 2, that it's impossible and practical to provide the service on a countywide basis, I think we would all agree that not one county fire department is going to be able to provide fire services for the entire county. And then D, I'm going to jump past C real quick, that there's a demand for the proposed services. I think everybody in all of our fire districts would basically tell you that they want fire service in some fashion. And then C obviously starts talking about the economically feasible to provide the service in the district, okay, without unreasonable burden annual taxes. I think that gets into the discussions about insurance ratings, service, things of that nature. And so I point that out because if you just take the time to reread it and really think about in your head how you would justify that, I think I would imagine that's how we got there quickly, probably with the Cashiers, Glenville, and the Highland side. Now I will go to the next page because there is another method that right now this county does not use or has not used, but it is a method available to the board to consider, and that's creating a rural fire protection district. Now, this one, a rural fire protection district, is another form that's allowable for special tax districts. Excuse me. The methodology is as follows. The Board of Commissioners would have to receive a petition signed by 35% of the residents who live and own property within the proposed district. Just so you know, the NC law sets a maximum tax rate under this process of 15 cents per $100 value. Upon receipt of a valid petition, the Board of Commissioners must call an election with the proposed district on the question of whether or not the county would levy taxes, and that's basically having a referendum. 3, if approved by the voters, the Board of Commissioners must establish the district. 4, the Rural Fire Protection District is a municipal corporation separate from the county, so it would be its own legal entity. A Fire Protection Commission would have to be established. The Board of Commissioners could act as that commission, or you could appoint a 3-member board that would have to be comprised of qualified voters in that district. And then finally, just under this item, that would be a separate legal entity that could borrow money and do other things financially, but the final say on the tax rate in that district would always fall back to the county commissioners. And so those are the methods if the board wishes to proceed forward with these conversations. I can tell you, if the board wishes to proceed forward, and let's say you wish to proceed forward under the service district side, then we're not out of time, but we're going to need to be putting this on the agenda for continued discussions, because where we start running out of time is giving that 4-week notice to all of the residents. So if the board wishes to proceed forward with this conversation, I would recommend we put it on the next agenda, and then even the next agenda, and the decision that would be made if you chose to move forward under this program would basically to create that report that I discussed, that I mentioned, and to go ahead, schedule a public hearing and go ahead and start notifying the citizens if you wish to proceed forward. That doesn't mean you've decided to create, you don't actually create the district until after you have the public hearing and things of that nature. It just means that from a timing perspective, we would have to start proceeding by the 1st of April. Now, if you look at the next one, if the board chose to proceed forward on some version of really it's a voter referendum of creating that, then ultimately, I'm not saying we put this off, but that is not going to happen before this coming budget year, and that would be a conversation that would take place in the next year to 2 years while we would be prepping for a referendum. And then obviously, the other choice would be to continue as you are now and trying to work with the Colby Volunteer Fire Department under our general taxing powers. And that would be a normal budget discussion like any other item.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that's my real quick, brief summary of just the options that are available to the board to consider this. Obviously, I'm not asking for any actions today. This is a work session, but I am looking for direction on whether or not we would want to continue these conversations in future board meetings.
So, if you would please for me restate the timeline under the creating a fire service district in order for this to be effective July 1. There's a series of steps, and what's the latest that we would have to take action?
My goal would be that I would ask that the board, the action itself of creating back it up. If you look at right now, the board is looking to try to adopt a budget June 15th, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that means if you were trying to put a COLA weighted volunteer fire department tax into that, you would have to have this resolution passed prior to that. So if you had a goal of passing this resolution, assuming that the public hearing went well and all of that, then your goal would probably attempt to do that. I'm gonna go backwards in this timeline, the 1st of June, somewhere in there. So if you attempt to do that, what that means is we would hope to be having the public hearing sometime in May, which means if you go back 4 weeks prior to that, then what you're looking to do is you're looking to pull the trigger or make the decision by the 1st of April. And that's really getting a little tight. That gives us, the thing about it is from a staff standpoint, probably the hardest thing is giving us a week or two to try to get the mailings out to people in regards to that. So I think at the latest, we'd want to make a decision to proceed forward with the notification and the public hearing is going to be the first week or two in April.
So our first meeting in April is on the 6th.
Yeah.
So we would have to take some kind of pretty hard and fast action.
Yeah, and I mean, if it got tight, you can have special call meetings if you want more information between now and then. Obviously, I'd recommend us just going ahead and putting it on Tuesday's agenda, let you consume this, have some more conversations about it. But if you looked at April 6th, I think it would be hard pressed to wait to April 20th. I think you could have another week and you could recess April 6th meeting to April 13th. But right there is getting relatively tight at that point. That starts bringing the public hearing more towards the end of May, beginning of June. But still, you could do that and it still gives you a week or two to make a decision after the public hearing.
Well, obviously, we're not in a position to make the decision today.
Correct.
I think we just received this information and I think we ought to go ahead and put it on the agenda for further discussion at the next meeting. That at least gives us an opportunity to take this proposal, look at it and evaluate it, and then come back and start further dialogue and see which direction we do want to go for the 16th. And I will say that I very much appreciate Cullowhee's patience. I know, having been on the board for several terms now, and we had a conversation some time back about this fire tax, and I said then that I really didn't want to take the opportunity to discuss it until after you had a building, because I knew this would be a huge cost driver in this conversation, and it would have been premature to try to talk about transitioning to a full-time department where you're having paid staff and all that you've presented today, trying to do that in an old facility and build a new building at the same time. And it just, to me, was a nightmare situation. And I asked if they all would hold off until this was built, and I appreciate your patience and willingness to do that. And so I'm ready to look at this and see what we can do. And, go from here.
We thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Other comments or questions then about this topic?
Well, I think for me, and I think it will be important for us going forward to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Green and Mr. Ash, that the conversation is, it's not because of this building that we need the fire tax. We need the fire tax because we need full-time employees who are going to keep our community safe.
Yeah.
And I think the problem will be perception somewhat, that if people think it's because of this beautiful new building and now we have to pay for it. No, that's taken care of. We need full-time staff to do the work to keep us safe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the point being, going back to what I just said though, if you've been in their old station,
Oh, my goodness.
they didn't have enough room for them to all sit down in a meeting,
Or sleep.
let alone
Anyone,
have
yeah.
sleeping quarters
No.
and all the other
Right.
issues that come in.
Absolutely. I think that was a wise.
One of the components that we discussed was that Terry, the amounts of money would increase your taxes at $350. You look at that $350, divide that by 12 months, that's $30. $30 a month is protecting your house. Then what you said, Chief, about you would be able to go back to rescue squad or assisting medical calls. When you say, can you give us an idea of how many calls you would be able to achieve if you had 4 staff here and 1 or 2 of them could go out on a medical call, whether it be in a residence or on the road?
it's probably gonna bump our call volume up to 2 to 250 more a year. And we'll be able to handle multiple calls at one time.
So there's a, beside the fire component, there's a medical component that's truly important to the community.
Exactly. So, I mean, just like while we was on break, they paid Tullahwee first responders for a public assist over here on Old Tullahwee Road. Lady went and got her COVID shot and collapsed at home, and they needed help getting them up. All the ambulances were tied up. They generally take care of that. The EMS does. That's all tied up. So our department having to go assist.
Yeah, that's important.
I guess what I'm saying real quick, that 30 some dollars a year, a month cost, $350 a year, what is gonna make your home safe and your family safer.
Yeah. Exactly.
Other comments or questions? Okay.
And we are the second largest fire district in Jackson County. Randy's one, and we're all right in behind, on about we cover the largest area, second largest. I mean,
But the most dense, it's the densest population in it.
It's a big district. Other business, I know Commissioner Woody had something. Mr. Adams, do you have anything that you want to bring up in addition
I do
to
not.
these items? I know Commissioner Woody in an email said she had
Yeah,
some items.
just 2 updates because these are things that have come up in a couple meetings. And one, I had mentioned at our last work session about the need for some of our nonprofits, especially that provide food, to have a get together. And I have since found out that there were other people working on this, which is wonderful. And Circles of Hope is kind of taking the lead to bring these groups together. And Dr. Kelly Brown, Chancellor of Western Carolina University, is on the Circles of Hope board. And she has agreed to host this get together. So we'll inform you as that moves forward. And we're just so pleased that she's willing to do this and that it will hopefully facilitate not duplicating services and make sure that our vulnerable, food insecure people's needs are met. And then the second thing is that we, Chad Parker and our litter, Jackson County Litter Task Force has, we are going to have a clean sweep, and this will be April 11th through the 17th, which is the first week of the statewide clean sweep, which is 2 weeks. But we're going to be involved in, and I'll be talking a little more about that later, but I wanted y'all to put it on your calendars. We're going to make a huge push, because I know you brought it up early on at one of our work sessions. There is a lot of litter. Some of it's been picked up by contract workers, but we had a meeting just this last Wednesday, and Mr. Lee from DOT spoke at the meeting. It was Zoom, but he said that he doesn't see contract litter pickup has dropped because of finances, DOT's financial concerns, and that they were able to do that one, but he doesn't see any coming forward soon. So we're going to take on that responsibility in Jackson County and our communities and just ask our citizens to step up and participate. So please put that on your calendar, April 11th through 17th.
Okay.
That's all.
Commissioner Deeds, do you have anything today?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Jones?
Just curious, has anybody talked to the state about Highway 107 and its needs of repair and work? Is that on the list anywhere? I saw recently the state gave out money for roads, and it was Highway 74 and I believe in Jackson, and a spot over in Murphy, and it seems like it was one other spot, but it was 107 wasn't included.
What part of 107 are you talking about?
There's sections past 281 heading up to Glenville. I mean, there's some bad spots up there.
I'll check on that. 'cause
I'm just
I wanna-
curious on where, because I'm starting to get asked by people, what's the status, and we can find that out.
I can check on that. Tom Striblin, can you hear us? Are you still on there? Hope you ain't wrecked.
I'm still here.
All right, hold it between the lines.
I'm trying. I can hear everything. I'm just not really being able to participate a whole bunch. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's fine. Maybe you can get back with us the next time.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or anything you need to bring up today?
Not really. I was just had the one question about if the people lived out of state, if they had to pay the tax also.
Okay. All right, well, stay safe.
Alrighty, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, y'all have a great week.
Okay, do I have a motion that we adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
We got you.
Bye.
Your thought about somebody else doing that was right, but isn't it wonderful that Western?
Oh, yeah.
And then Saturday, I was driving back from Holy, and there were all these
That's the
maternity
number
guys
one,
picking up along River Road.
the
So I
litter
stopped and thanked them,
Now past.
because there was no traffic coming.